Welcome, everyone, to another episode. I'm Chris Watson. Now, what is the single most important aspect when looking to scale your agency or your SaaS? Is it a great product? Is it great marketing? Well, the answer is neither. Sure, these two aspects are super important, but Dylan tells us exactly what he focuses on, which has allowed him to scale his agency and have a whopping 8-figure exit for it. He also shares with us exactly how he managed to get clients like True Classic Tees, HexClad, Planet Fitness, and many more. He tells us exactly what the one thing you should really heavily focus on as a CRO agency. Another line he shared with me, which has really stuck with me, was clicks don't pay the bills, revenue does. So the tool he's actually currently building, Heatmap.com, is amazing. And he shares with us exactly how this is going to change the way we optimize websites. And if you know anything about Dylan, is that he always overshares value. So this episode is packed with super, super interesting golden nuggets, I would even call them. So take out your notepad, get ready to write everything down, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's dive right in. Very, very excited today to have Dylan Ander, founder of splittesting.com, with a very successful exit, founder and CEO now of Heatmap.com. Dylan is a serial entrepreneur, also a USPTA certified tennis coach. So something I don't think everyone knows. Also a singer, songwriter, and has written several songs that reached the Billboard Hot 100. So Dylan, it seems that you excel at everything you put your mind to. So that's why I'm super excited today to chat with you. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
So with such an interesting career, such an interesting journey, for anyone that doesn't know you, how do you sort of explain it to them?
In what regard? Where the one thing, when I ask a lot of new team members or, prospects to potentially come on as team members, I always ask them what their superpower is, right? What their dream job is and what their superpower is. So for me, I just love making things and doing things. If I'm making something or doing something, I'm a happy guy. So that's why the desire to just keep growing even after exits is it's always there. I love making new things.
Yeah, amazing. Love that. And if we go, about the idea of you building things all the time with your business perspective, there are so many fields, especially now when it comes to online marketing. You've got Facebook, you've got email, you've got everything. CRO or experimentation is something that has followed you, throughout the years. What is it about this space particularly that keeps your attention throughout all these years?
Definitely. So, a little background on how I actually got here. So, I had two exits before about like 22, 23, and I was running an agency for several years. And at the same time as I was building those brands, I always wanted that stable cash flows. You buy 500,000, put it back down, buy 500,000, put it back down. It's like unstable in terms of cash flow, or at least your cash position. So I always had an agency that was, really cash flow positive and just something stable that I could rely on every month. And we did a lot of SEO and a lot of Facebook ads and started split testing. But I started my first Shopify store at 17, and shout out Ezra Firestone and Zipify. I used it all the way back in the day, and you were able to split test. So I saw that feature and I said, like, wow, that's kind of cool. Like, let me test these two headlines. And consistently, I would, while I was drop shipping, where everyone's competing for the same ad space, it just kind of helped me cut through and get a better CPA and acquire more customers faster than others. That it was always like in my head, right? It was always something that I'd done, but it was never like a main strategy. It was always like an afterthought. To be honest, like every e-commerce marketer, that split testing is an afterthought, not an initial, strategy going in. So that was kind of where I just ran my first split test to begin with. And, I also built a full landing page while others were drop shipping and sending traffic to a PDP. I always had a unique landing page. So between those two things, I realized like, wow, the website is like really moving the needle versus just focusing on the ads. So as I said, like I had my agency, I also started offering, CRO as a service or like, split testing as a service. I didn't know of any other agencies at the time doing this. We're talking like 8, 9 years ago. So it's been a minute. So in the agency, eventually, one of my mentors said, Dylan, you can't be the best at all of these marketing tactics. I want you to be the best at one. So ditch clients on the others and just do one. And I was like, well, this whole split testing thing seems to be doing really well. I've got some stories as to how it like, did some crazy numbers for Geico and Planet Fitness, even though that wasn't even the service I was offering them. So went super broke that year, super not broke the next year. I say that all the time, and super grateful for CRO. Now looking at two exits later, and I'm a happy guy and I love what I do.
But that story definitely gives it all the context I think we need. Like you said, you sort of stumbled upon it, and it's super interesting though to think that you were there before everyone else, meaning that you saw how massively important it is, and to sort of, I can only imagine though how difficult it must have been to educate some potential customers or clients about the service because they don't know it, they don't see all this content everywhere. So actually, yeah, how did you get them interested and excited enough to run this as a service for themselves?
So I had to do a money back guarantee because everyone's like, I'm getting a 3.5x ROAS like on new customers. Like, I don't really need this whole,
Yeah,
landing page thing. Like running ads to the PDP is working just fine.
yeah.
And I'm like, well, why not a 4.5? And they're like, I mean, yeah, but it's not like necessary. So a lot of people didn't see it as like necessary on their, expenses every month. And I mean, I was charging like 1,500 a month back in the day, which like now everyone knows is really nothing for a good CRO agency. And I had devs and designers and everyone on staff. And it was quite interesting. So I had to claw my way for a money back guarantee, which to be honest, I used that money back guarantee until a year and a half ago. And that's when you guys started to see a bunch of agencies coming up with the double your money after, 4 months or 3 months, something like that, which is what I had started with. So
Mm,
I had told everyone, look, if I can't double what you're paying me, are you happy with that? Or even triple that? Because if they were getting their ROAS, right? So let's say they had a 3x ROAS, I would actually have to say, if I 3x your investment, will you do it with me? And they're like, had to claw my way there. Like, shout out to Alex Hormozy, $100 million offers. This was way before that book came out, but I guess kind of intuitively back in the day, I had to like make sure that like people were, getting their money back, making, they were cash flow positive on our services, which every agency should go for. But in this regard, there's a very specific way to measure, which CRO agencies should still do today. Be careful of any CRO agency that charges a percent of lift. It doesn't work. I've tried every single business model. Only way that works well is a flat retainer every month and, a money back guarantee. Trust me, I've tried every single which way with every type of client. That is the only way to run ongoing CRO for customers.
mm. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, like you said, you had to have a lot of risk on your side with the money back guarantee to get them interested enough. Before we dive deeper into CRO specifically as a service and a process, you mentioned, you've got a lot of experience when it comes to just business and being an entrepreneur. You already mentioned one, which was, one of your mentors told you like, you can't do everything, just focus on one. But what are some core business principles that you always try and focus or have in the front of your mind?
That's a good question. Um, so number one for me is team, 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 and that is it. You are nothing without your team. Right now at heatmap.com, I literally have almost 60 employees at only a seed stage company. And if we lost some of our key team members, like your team is all you have. I will take a crappy product with a good team every day of the week over a mediocre team with a great product, right? Like a lot of people think the product gets you there, but it's actually the team that gets you there because the team can make the product better. And now you got the best of both worlds. So I've got nearly 100% employee retention rate since I was 17 all the way till today. So it's very uncharacteristic for a team member to leave any of my companies, really because I just go the little extra mile for them. I mean, I'm not, doing anything crazy outside of employment, just check in on someone, ask them questions instead of yelling at them like most, founders do when they get frustrated. Even if it's coming directly out of my pocket, I'm like, okay, that stinks. How do we make it better next time? And how do we not make that mistake next time? And always just being, positive and forward looking with your team members. That's really the biggest thing. So getting an absolute amazing team. And Jordan Ross is another, he owns 8 Figure Agency. He had consulted with me before I had sold my agency, really to help me ramp it all the way up. And he told me something I could never get out of my head, which I still do today, which is you should always canvas harder for talent than you do for customers. So that means literally be more of a salesman for potential employees than for clients. So I can say proudly today, I always have 20 people on deck. So like I have 20 people that if I ever say, hey, quit your job right now, show me your salary, give me a pay stub, I will match it and, potentially give you equity in the company and you're coming over to me. And every time I've done that in the past year and a half, 2 years, they've moved over within a month. So I've just built those relationships with those people, just kind of like a lot of people think they need to, well, you really do need to, if you're in the venture game, you need to keep building relationships with VCs. But for me, no matter what I do, I always have to keep relationships with the absolute killer operators. So that's really the biggest thing for me. I'll always talk about team on most podcasts. I talk about team, but yeah, I'll let you think on that one. But yeah, let me think on the others. But that's really like principle number one. And I feel like that solves everything. And also when team members leave, that's actually one of the reasons why it's one of the top 5 reasons why companies go out of business actually is by losing key team members. So it's kind of downside protection risk as well as upside revenue growth.
It's funny how every podcast I listen with you, you always have insights that I find that you can't really find anywhere else. And it's just massively valuable. And like you said, to focus more on actually getting good team members instead of only focusing on acquiring clients or customers. That's all you hear, get more clients, get more clients. But like you said, if you have a very, very good team, they're going to do the work to the point where you're going to get maybe inbound referrals because the quality of your work is so good. So as usual, every answer you give, I love that. Maybe you already answered it a little bit, but that was, on the business side, personality traits or maybe daily habits that you have. What personality traits would you say that have allowed you to reach the levels of success, that you have reached at that sort of early age of yours?
So some of it I will say is learned behavior. Some of it I'll say is just kind of how I was born and the type of person I am. I'll start with the second one where like you'd mentioned, I was a songwriter for years. I've always been a creative guy. I love reading books, like a lot of things like that. Books have been like my biggest source of wisdom, just as mentors, as well, because the people writing the books are so profound. Like, I always say I'm not smart, I just read a lot. But really, number two, I just have this crazy drive inside of me that like I won't stop. It's not hustle culture. I absolutely hate hustle culture so much. It's not about the long hours, but it's like shower thoughts is something that I tell all my team members. When you come on full time, I want your shower thoughts. And they're like, okay, it's like an interesting perspective where a lot of my shower thoughts, potentially sometimes to an unhealthy degree for myself, do go over to business. And that's just something of how I was born, how I was wired. I really started making money at 13 because I had to. That I've just always, and it's not about the money, it's just making new things and having new experiences and challenges to overcome. That's just something that is just inside of me. That's not something I can tell someone to really go and do. And it's not like I'm better than anyone else. It's like I've burned out before. I've made a lot of mistakes before due to that, but that is something that I've had that has helped me over the years, sometimes hurt me over some years, but net been a really big positive. And then the, behaviors, because who you are as a person is different than the behaviors you decide to take. The behaviors, number one, I've always historically been a pretty impatient guy. I've had to work on that so much. I've read 2 books on just the concept of patience. After I read those 2, it was tremendous. Number 2, never be accusatory. Always ask questions. One of my favorite books, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He's a hostage negotiator. Incredible book. I recommend it to everyone. Actually, a few people on the ConversionWise team have read it, I believe, just off my recommendation. It's been incredible. I love books. And yeah, that's been a thing where, something really bad happens. I'd rather ask a question to get to the root of it than like mush the horses, like you can only like smash the horses so much to run faster or to run in a different direction. It just doesn't work that way. That's not how humans are wired. So you kind of have to, have tremendous patience that comes along with asking great questions, at the right time. And number three, I would say this goes across any single business model, whether you're in e-com, you're in services, you're in SaaS, I mean, that covers, infrastructure, that covers in pretty much every single business model. The ability to empathize with your customers is everything for marketing, for sales, for fulfillment, for the type of product you make, if you need to change your product. Absolutely everything comes down to. I really hate the phrase that the customer is always right, because the customer isn't always right. Customers have emotions, customers have feelings, and feelings don't always create like, objective, feedback necessarily. It's not a objective feedback loop. So people you being able to empathize with customers and really figure out what they want and give it to them. There's no problem in business that cannot solve, which is empathizing with your customers and giving them what they want.
Again, such a complete answer. So many golden nuggets, I want to say there. And I think that the things you mentioned, with patience, having empathy, is also asking really good questions, even when there is a problem. Also, I'm pretty sure translated in you keeping the people on your team so long. If something is wrong, instead of telling them they did a bad job, it's asking them questions, having empathy, and they also feel they're actually in a safe space, right? Okay.
The empathy goes internal as well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, again, very interesting. If we go a little bit more now onto the agency side, you mentioned some very interesting names like Planet Fitness, HexClad, True Classic Tees. Those are very, very big names. Most agencies would love to be able to work with, but they might never really get to that point where they can work with those big brands. How did you manage to get your agency to a point where you have access to those big brands, those big clients?
So I'll put it twofold. Number one, there's circles, group chats, maybe it's fantasy football, whatever it is. There's groups of the top operators in every industry. Mm-hmm. So especially in e-commerce, where both you and I have focused a lot. I know of a couple of group chats of people that probably do a couple of $1 billion a year in revenue, just e-com. You do a good job for one, you kind of win the business of all of them. So that's kind of principle number one. But number two, of how to get there, where most agencies don't, your product and delivery needs to be strong enough and like such a great product. Like if you think of, Peloton, it was a viral product. It's such an amazing product as well. And that's really where they grew. It wasn't their marketing that was so clever or incredible. It was more so the product was so incredible. The word of mouth was just mind-boggling. So in the agency world, you don't need as much word of mouth. I mean, 3 or 4 people sending over and you signing 3 or 4 more big retainers, that's a couple extra employees. That's a, big opportunity to grow. So that kind of gets to number 2, where that word of mouth happens. I network a lot, but I hate the word networking. I just use it because that's what everyone else says, but I think it's degrading to the other person. It's like, I don't want to be networked with. I want to build an honest relationship. Yeah. And what I did and always played the long game was build an honest relationship. And just like I had said, about canvassing for employees and they're ready to come over at any point, you do the same for potential customers, right? Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of these really large companies that I had just built relationships. They sent me over, maybe a Figma file, and I gave them a 10-minute loom in response. And they're like, thank you, I appreciate that. Or just unprompted, I would send them a Loom video, or if I found a bug on their website, I'd always send it over and just say, have a great day, go fix this up.
Nice.
And I just always built up a beautiful relationship with these people where they would come to me for thoughts. They're like, hey, Dylan, I really trust you. Do you have like a new email agency that you recommend? And I'd go send an intro. I would actually say, hey, instead of a referral fee, can you give 10% off to this, brand owner? And the agency would be happy to, because it would have been 10% for me or 10% off for them. And
Okay.
again, those, genuine relationships helping others
Mhm.
is really what has skyrocketed my career. Where, again, just like you go that little bit extra for your team members, make sure you go that little bit extra to build actual relationships. And, people think networking is a one-time thing. Like, I just hosted the Q4 summit with Nick Sharma and Dan Pantello, Jimmy, and a couple of other people as well. And, I got to meet Harley from Shopify, who's incredible. And yeah, we got to meet, but did I network with him? No, I started off a beautiful relationship that will last a long time. And, that's just those types of things, right? So, just always building these lovely relationships with people and making sure they are two-way relationships. And also for brand owners, one other thing, people love giving advice, right? Like, hey, I'm on this podcast for that reason. I love helping others. So I would go to those brand owners and also ask questions about the agency, saying, hey, I've had this and this problem. If you were our customer, what would you want to see in this
Mhm.
situation? And then I got a bunch of answers, and then it got made our product better. So it's just kind of this whole feedback loop of helping each other, building an organic relationship, not just a one-time network and pitch someone. That's where most agencies go wrong, and then the brand will never work with you ever again. So I know that was a big roundabout one, but hopefully that was answering the question.
It has, and so much more. I think I'm gonna stop saying at the end of every answer that it was massively valuable, because that's the only thing I'm gonna be saying. But that's super interesting because again, I think a lot of people often they focus maybe on cold outreach. I want to sell you something, and like you said, it's binary. It's either yes we work together or no we don't, and okay that's it. But I love how you provide value without expecting anything in return. It builds trust, and even if you're not going to get a direct work opportunity with that person, they might know someone that needs it. And like you said, those circles you mentioned at the beginning, you're getting closer to those circles. So again, massively valuable. You've probably then answered a little bit the next question, but it was that if you had to start over if you had to start all over again, you mentioned you were there maybe at the beginning when no one really was doing CRO. It was very new. Let's say now you had to start over again. You don't have the network, of people you've built relationships with. You don't have the followers. You don't really have anything. You're in a competitive space. How would you start over again? Or is it similar to what you just said?
Like you just mentioned, the social media like following, that's actually something that's been new for me. I get to meet a lot of people and they're really awesome. They're like, man, your content's helped me so much and that type of stuff. And it's super kind, and that fills up my cup. Um, it is not about me. It's not about my follower count. It's always about others. Like I told you, how I built all these relationships for years, that's a slow burn, right? Social media, if it doesn't like pop off, it is also a slow burn, but it's something that's not like I need to fly to 17 conferences, 25 conferences a year, be on a plane every single week. There were 2 years there where I literally was on a plane every single week. My profits of the agency were eaten up by me going and traveling to the next conference, to the next conference, to the next conference. So I built amazing relationships that way that last a long time. But what I would do again, if I started again today, I would go straight for the social media following. It's been more fruitful than you could ever imagine. It's really incredible. So I would start from the personal brand side. And that's probably like hopefully in the 50-year time frame, I think that's going to be one of my most valuable assets, more than money, more than a company, more than equity in a company. I think it's going to be my most valuable asset. And I'm really just getting started on it. And I haven't been great at posting lately. I've been too busy. So that's probably the route I would go again. But the thing is, make sure you are targeting a very specific subset of followers.
Okay.
That there is a very big misleading thing of how many followers you have. My social media accounts right now, or at least my, Twitter, I've refused to say X, my Twitter, it's not growing like it used to, but I get so much like I have the most like, a lot of people say it as I've like promoted and helped, but I have the most potent group of followers and marketers who are just really, really, really advanced. Instead of going for the numbers of saying, here's how I would start again today, it's like instead of that type of stuff, it's really like, hey, here's my CRO hack. Here's one thing I noticed in post-purchase upsells. Here's a very specific thing. And it's like, it just breeds the top marketers. But also, if I was starting over again today, I wouldn't have the knowledge I had today. So it's kind of a catch 22, right? Where if you're just, posting your life and you have a two client agency, people aren't going to want to follow as much. So it's really a catch 22, but I would have focused on social media a heck of a lot earlier and it was easier to grow back then as well. So yeah, that's probably what I would have done.
Okay. Again, very valuable though. So you would focus more on quality content and quality followers instead of going for the quantity where you try and help everyone. Because if you help everyone at the end, maybe you help no one. So
Because
again,
the other thing as well is, well, yeah, you nailed it on that last part. The other thing as well about how I grew my social media following, like to such a deep degree, it's even how I found the CEO of splittesting.com before I sold. It was through like once you build like it's like you can build personal relationships over Zoom. We've all learned that now. So what I would do is if I saw someone who's like content, I was like, this person seems super smart. Like, and I would just DM them saying, hey, would love to talk. Been seeing a bunch of your content. Like, I think it'd be rad to jump on a call. And, I'd either have like a rationale for it, or sometimes it would just be general. And I would jump on a bunch of phone calls. So instead of flying out to all the conferences and networking, it's like in 30 minutes, you could actually build a halfway decent relationship with someone, I will say, especially if it's like not a pitch and it's just getting to meet each other and build a relationship. You can do a lot in 30 minutes, even just over Zoom. So you can go in and DM a lot. And again, this is not mass DMs of cold DMs. This is
yeah,
like a genuine warm DM, like, written down each time specific to a person. So there's no tricks or tips or hacks to it. It's just be genuine, reach out if you want to talk to someone, say, hey, I really respect what you've done. Like, I definitely have a couple of questions on the agency side. Would you mind jumping on a call?
mm,
Almost 100% hit rate and book a
yeah.
call.
Yeah, definitely. Agreed with that because I also try to build more relationships with people. And I've tried both routes, where you try and message more people. And I've realized exactly what you just said, where if it's more of a one-to-one hyper personalized message, I want to talk to you about this specific thing. Response rate is always a lot better. And I think you can also feel it when there's a pitch behind it. It's like, why are you asking me this question? And most times there is actually a pitch behind that. So
So
again,
that's actually something as well, which I literally say at the end. So like I would be like, hey, just wanted to reach out. Like, really love what you're doing. I think it's awesome. Would love to connect. No pitches, I promise. Would
okay,
just love to actually get to meet.
nice.
So I would say no pitching. I'm not
Mm,
going to pitch. So that was another thing that got like near 100% response rate.
yeah, it sounds like you even optimized your outreach system and got better
I
conversion
can't
rate
help
with that
it.
one. So
I
nice,
can't
good.
help it. It's just in my bones.
It's in the nature, no problem. Once an optimizer, always an optimizer. But if we go now a little bit more onto the actual CRO part of testing, I'm guessing that once you get to those big brands, or even if we're not talking about those 9-figure brands, but also those solid 8-figure brands, they've probably been through a fair share amount of tests or different CRO agencies. How do you then, as your agency, or how did you, when you get that new client, how do you actually optimize a website that has already been optimized quite well and where all of the sort of low hanging fruits have already been done? How do you do it?
First off, never say low hanging fruit. That's one thing first.
I'll stop
No
saying
such
it.
thing. There's no such thing. If there were low hanging fruit, the brand would have done it already.
Okay.
They would have had someone who is halfway competent to be able to do it, right? So that's number one. It's a big fallacy. And the other thing as well is I've seen some of the most traditionally ugly websites that are generating 300 million a year. But you want to know why? Just like Barry Hott says to make ugly ads, I don't hate ugly websites. And the interesting part in that is the target demographic. There's there's a lot of like right now, I would not start an e-com brand if it wasn't to a middle-aged audience that Facebook will convert on. And again, middle-aged. To those middle-aged folks, that new, sexy, like animated React front end, like, beautiful over-the-top website, shiny, polished. It feels foreign to them. And actually, people who are younger like us don't trust those old-looking websites. People who are older don't trust those new looking websites. So there's a lot of things where people use the word I a lot in marketing. I think this should happen. I would not click on this, so we should probably change the ad in this direction. I would click on something like this versus this. You're one person. You're probably not in the demographic. And even if you are, you're one person. So that's a big problem. Whenever you hear marketers say I, it's wrong. Whenever you start to say they and the customers and the audience, now you're talking. And that's the way that I actually go about CRO really to start, which is it's all about the customers. I always say there's two main sentences to my CRO, and that's the whole practice, which is whoever understands their customers the best wins at every single marketing channel. And number two, ask your customers what they want, give them what they want, and you get what you want, which is money. So I always start with customer feedback surveys. I start with heat maps to understand what they're doing on the website. I take a look at ads as well, which is something that not a lot of CROs do, is I actually request the top converting ad creatives. I can look on the Facebook library, but, I take a look at the ones that are, best. And this is also for e-com brands. You assume that drive most traffic through Meta, Facebook, that type of thing. And yeah, that's really what it looks like. And, if you don't understand the customers, you don't understand the business, you don't understand anything about it. So I go out of my way, like obsess over the customers. And even down to, for some like really large clients, I would pick up the phone and call their customers. So I've gone that far before and like just obsess over the customers. And then like the customers will give you the answers, right? The same way, to tie it back to how it works for every business. When I told you how I would ask brand owners in the agency, like, how would you want this to be handled? How would you want this to be handled? Just ask that to e-com customers as well. They're going to tell you exactly what they want. And, you do 10, 15, 20, 30 phone calls, like you're golden. Plus customer feedback survey to their emails, post-purchase surveys. I use in a very specific way. I don't, it's because like they haven't experienced the product yet. So I actually don't use post-purchase surveys for like product intel or website intel. I just, use them in a different way. But yeah, again, just understand the customers, ask what they want, give them what they want, and you get what you want, which is more money.
Again, I love that answer. And the part of calling your customers, I've also done it a couple of times, and you get some incredible insights from it. You also get some very, very long stories where they start just talking about their life. But again, those can be very insightful pieces of information. Yeah. I'm just thinking with voice of customer data in that point, then there are a lot of biases where people maybe, especially maybe on post-purchase survey, they say something, but maybe subconsciously they're thinking something different. How do you then filter through what can really help optimize the website and remove basically when people, they think something, but it's not really valuable to you?
I rely on my good friend ChatGPT, actually.
Okay.
I download transcripts from interviews. I export my entire, customer feedback survey. I upload them. Currently, I make a custom GPT of, brand name customers, and I upload all of it into there. And I just talk to them as if they're customers.
Okay.
So that's a nice use of AI going forward. Obviously, you can do it by hand, but why do that when there's a $20 a month, behemoth that works for you? So that's something that I do a lot as well. Like another thing there is exporting reviews on a website. You can upload those into ChatGPT as well. So it's like, interviews, reviews, as well as, customer feedback surveys, right? So those three, load them in. You literally are talking to a customer. It's wild.
Okay,
So that's a
that's
more up-to-date CRO tactic.
yeah, definitely. But you got to stay at the forefront of the newest trends, right? So you mentioned in a previous podcast that 80% of the winners you guys had were mainly copy and images. I'm seeing a lot of people, they focus a lot on how to use the website, maybe, loads of different things. So this is more of a two-part question. Why do you think that is, that 80% of your winners came from copy and images? And then also, what's your process like, if you have one, on actually optimizing these two parts of the websites?
So the first part I can go pretty deep into, which is um, the role of an ad and a website. An ad is to get a qualified, interested person over to your website, and then the ad is done. People think the ad, like they oversell in their ads. Like your ad is not what convinces someone to buy. They don't spend all their time on the ad, go through the website, click buy and leave, or click buy and buy. It's not what happens. They look at the ad, maybe it's a long one, maybe it's a short one, and they go over to the website, they surf around, well. So like I'll put it in physical terms. Actually, I'm excited about this one. I've never thought of it this way. Let's put it in terms of a physical store.
Sure.
Your UX is like your service and how things are laid out.
Mhm.
Your copywriting and your images are the content that people are reading and seeing.
Mhm.
Those are the products that you're selling.
Yeah.
If you go into a store and you don't like the products, it could be the most beautiful store in the world, perfect UX, right? The perfect user experience. They could walk in, they could give you a warm towel. They can say, or like, hey, what would you like to drink, sir? And, ma'am, and like, go
Yeah.
forward and, do over the top service. But if you don't like what's on the shelves,
Yeah.
you're not going to buy.
Mm.
So that's where the content on the website, like, of course, the product has to be something they want, but even further, you're explaining for the website purposes itself of CRO, you're looking at the copy and the content, or images and videos. So when you look at that content, I don't care about the user experience. That's why a lot of these ugly websites, like, sometimes convert well because their messaging is just so dialed. They've been around for a long time. They know their ICP so well. They know their customers as well as they know their own family. So it's kind of like, that store example really does give why copywriting and content is, the 80-20 over UX.
Mm. That's a really good analogy because, like you said, it could be the best experience. You can, like you said, you want a warm towel. You can walk around perfectly. If you don't like what's in the store, you're just going to want to leave immediately. So that's a great comparison. And then the process you have to have the best copy and images. I'm guessing that's the better you know your customers, the better questions you ask them, then you sort of know how to optimize it, right? Okay, perfect.
Absolutely.
And then you also mentioned that what most optimizers don't do, but this is where like the big winners is iterating on a potential, or like you have a winner and then you iterate on that one instead of just moving on to the next one. What's
Mhm.
your, again, if you have one, process like when it comes to iteration of winners?
So I do have a book coming out. I've been saying it for a while. My editors just keep tearing me apart, and then I get busy. But we're so close. We're on final copy edits. So one thing I talk about in the book is it's actually a full chapter. It's called The Art of the Follow-Up Test. My dad gave me the phrase when I was young, you're either right or you learn something. And that's kind of like a good analogy that like came full circle when I realized that in tests. So shout out to Brittany. She was our most CRO. She was the queen of CRO. She still is. She's amazing. That she actually told me like, the follow-up test, which is like, I'd always done it, but she had called it a follow-up test, which is actually the formal term. So let's say you're on heatmap.com, you see a search icon has a really high revenue per click compared to others, and you decide to make a site-wide
Yep.
search bar icon. Most CROs will just say, awesome, great win. Let's go to the next hypothesis on a different element.
Mm.
But your other option is you just found out that search is really important for this brand. Why don't you toss that search potentially in the mobile nav? Why don't you actually go in and optimize the type of search? May, invest in a new plugin or invest in new technology to improve said search. That's the art of the follow-up test. Then after that, maybe you run and change the actual text that is in the
Yeah.
search bar. That's a secret little test not a lot of people do, but it helps so much. So yeah, it's like that's what the art of the follow-up test is. I can tell you guys like, concepts on how to split test. It's always about the customer, but the art of the follow-up test is where you get those double-digit wins. It's not from an initial just thought, right? Those double-digit wins are typically only follow-up tests in my experience.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I'm very happy I asked this question because yesterday I was working on a brief for the search bar, actually, exactly what you just said, where there's just a search bar. It has a lot of revenue when people click on it. And then the test initially is having the search bar bigger. And if that's a winner, I already know how I'm going to follow up on that one. So timing is perfect for that one. And you mentioned Heatmap, which is an amazing tool. I use it every day. The amount of insights and winners I got from it is just wild. I'm thinking though, what are some ways people can use heatmap.com, which aren't typically the way they use it, because often people, you see, okay, revenue per click, revenue per visitor, but is it maybe, I've started using segmentation as well a lot more, which is also very, very valuable. Yeah, do you have any sort of higher level tips or secrets to
Yeah.
share here?
So inside a heat map, we have a huge education center. I can
Yes.
definitely spruce up the content a bit, but it's something that's really important to us is educating because I don't want to, we're humans behind a software. It's not like, hey, here's our code base. Thanks for the money. That's not how it works. So it's a two-way relationship where I really try to make sure I, educate everyone on the platform and give you guys the best chance of hitting those winners. So, the biggest way, like you said, that I recommend that people I watch, I like, we watch screen recordings just like tmap.com does with others. It's really cool how to be able to watch product analytics, which is kind of wild. And I don't see as many people using those filters.
Mhm.
So actually segmenting and going down into specific users, specific groups of users is great. If you're a CRO agency or you're an in-house CRO, you're a developer, you're a designer, whatever part of CRO you work on, if you're using Heatmap, you should be taking a look. Of course, there's optimizing for elements with a high revenue per click or revenue per session. That's a lot of stuff that you can go in and watch in the education center. I don't feel the need to dive into it right here. Those are the fundamentals.
Yeah.
But the thing that most don't do is go in and filter for the most important business objectives that you have. So if a customer comes to you, Chris, at ConversionWise and says, our number one goal in this CRO engagement is to lower our CPA. Great. Where do you acquire your customers? It's from Meta. Awesome. Filter for Meta.
Mhm.
Then go make your decisions. If they say acquiring net new customers, no matter what the channel, great. Go filter for new users. If email is their focus, it's typically returning customers. Go focus on your returning. So it's really like go follow the money is another part of CRO that I use as well, which it's just like it's called the law of big numbers. A 5% increase on $100,000 is 5 grand. That might be your retainer.
Mhm.
But a 5% increase on $1 million is $50,000.
Yeah.
It's probably a 10x on your retainer, right? So that's what it looks like. Where if you just go and follow the money, you might
Mhm.
get a double. Let's say you increase revenue per session by 50%, which is wild on a specific page.
Yeah.
If that page gets about 3 or 4% of total traffic, for that wild increase you made, that's about a 1.5% increase in revenue, which don't get me wrong, that's lovely. Who doesn't want
Mhm.
an extra 1 to 2% of revenue for no incremental cost? But it's misleading because it's one of the lower pages. So a 50% increase, which is mind boggling, doesn't really amount to much. So go follow the money. That's the
Mhm.
TLDR.
Again, great answer because this has given me so many ideas on how I can use it, even better. Um, I do have some rapid fire questions as well because we're getting closer to the end. Before we get into that one, I was just also wondering because I just mentioned, how amazing Heatmap is because I remember when I was doing research on Microsoft Clarity, for example, you tend to often think, okay, this is getting a lot of clicks. This must be important. Let me make this more important or bigger or more obvious on the website. you might be damaging it because you don't know what kind of revenue this is generating. Do you have an example of a very sort of counterintuitive win you've managed to get thanks to Heatmap where you actually track revenue? Do you have just an example?
Yeah,
I'm sure you've
so
got tons, but
for
just one.
those who don't know, like, a really big one. So Heatmap is the only heat map in the world that or really the only on-site analytics tool in the world that ties revenue to every element on your website. So what comes of that is you're able to actually see, okay, if you use Clarity, Hotjar, or any of the others, you're just seeing clicks. And the big motto of Heatmap is that clicks don't pay the bills.
Nice.
That's what we say. So revenue does. So you might see that a section is absolutely lit up with clicks. But if those people aren't going on eventually to buy, those are bad clicks. You don't want that focus, right? So it's just kind of like an ad. If people have a very long watch time, that's a good indicator that like the ad is doing really well. But then you go to the website, and if that, even if they're watching 2, 3 minutes of a video, if they don't go on to buy afterwards, is it a great ad?
Mm.
Probably not, right?
Yeah.
So same thing with clicks. A certain element can be getting lit up by clicks, but that's why we have revenue per click, which is a pretty revolutionary metric. We've just no software has had it before. So now you have your revenue per click of every element, and that and revenue per session is the North Star. So it's like you now think instead of clicks, how much revenue does this element drive versus how many clicks does this element drive?
Yep.
Clicks aren't part of KPIs, revenue is.
Yeah.
So you're able to take every element and, take a look at that. So I found some wild metrics, and just looked at a site and, if you just cover up, if you don't click on anything in heat map and you just look at clicks, and then, you'll have one story of the website, but then you click around with your cursor and actually see the revenue and you're like, gosh,
Like
that's
that. Yeah.
crazy different. So it's just something where go get a free trial on heatmap.com. It's free. Highly recommend. I might be biased though. You'll be able to make a huge ROI, but yeah, just focus on revenue. Go follow the money.
Mm. And you're not biased because, like I said, I'm using it every day, and it's super valuable. So definitely worth trying. So I could continue this conversation for hours and keep asking you questions. Every answer you give uh, generates like new questions. But again, we are at the end here, so some rapid fire questions. Are you ready for them? You mentioned you do a lot of reading. I saw you tweeted once that you read 40 to 50 books a year. How do you, if you have a trick, how do you retain the knowledge that you read?
I write all over my books.
Okay, didn't expect that answer.
As
Okay.
as I read, I have a pen in my hand at all times.
And do you find that helps you retain the information better? Yeah? Okay, nice. Okay, well, I'll definitely do that from now on. What's your favorite productivity hack?
Uh, Go read the book Getting Things Done by David Allen.
Mhm.
There's something where you can't really do more than 6 tasks a day. I always have something like this where I
Okay.
literally have 6 tasks or less that I need to get done
Mhm.
that day. That productivity gets destroyed if you have a to-do list and you don't hit all of them. Your subconscious brain doesn't trust your to-do list anymore, doesn't trust your body to actually do said
Okay.
things on your to-do list. So Getting Things Done by David Allen, highly recommend.
Adding that to my read list, definitely. If you could have dinner with anyone that has ever lived or that is alive, who would that be?
Rick Rubin. He is the
Okay,
best music producer of all time.
nice, nice. On the topic of books, what are 3 books that you've read that have changed the way you approach business specifically?
The 4 Hour Work Week. I read it when I was 18. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, FBI hostage negotiator, and Getting Things Done by David Allen, actually, for productivity. I'd say those are the three.
This isn't like necessarily a rapid fire question, but just something I'm curious since I've been following you for a long time. You seem to find sources of information that are very uncommon. It's not like everyone's talking about it. It's the next hyped book, all those kind of things. How do you find this sort of secret, if we can call it that, information?
Books is number one. And
Hmm.
number two, every single marketing newsletter you could ever imagine that has ever existed, no matter how big or small, I have a dedicated email where I follow every one of them. And I go through skim, nah, nothing here. Skim, nothing here. And I also pay for information as well, not those info products, but things like Baymart as well. So, number one, pay for quality content. Two, I have an email that everyone can spam me as much as they want. And then number three, books.
Okay. And then last one, what's the first thing you do when you typically start your workday?
I take 10 really long, deep breaths. It's not like, it's a form of meditation. I just wake up, I just take 10 really deep breaths, try to clear my mind, and then start my day at my desk.
Okay. Again, did not expect that answer, but that's a very, very nice one. So, didn't like I said, I could be talking with you all day, but we have hit the time. Um, Thank you so much for this episode. Seriously, I'm going to watch this again right now because there's so much, and I'm going to take notes. For anyone that wants to follow you or continue this conversation, where can they go?
At Dylan Ander is the best way to reach me on Twitter. You can find me there on LinkedIn as well. Those are the two platforms I use. As well as heatmap.com/newsletter. I write it a lot myself as well as my team. So you'll be getting my direct CRO access as well. And yeah, those are going to be the two best to reach me. And go give a follow. And the book title is called Why Your Website Sucks. And it's exactly what you think it is. And super excited to launch that out. That'll be probably in the new year because no one wants to launch new products during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, even if they're not e-com. So thanks so much, Chris. You're the man, and we'll talk soon.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.